specifically when someone calls in. We discuss the matter as far as any mandatory reporting obligations that may apply. And then I make a particular point. I say, now, if the mandatory reporting obligation doesn't apply in a certain state, I say, I want two elders to go back to the victim or their family and explain to them very clearly that they have the absolute right to be able to go and report this matter to the authorities. That's their privilege, and they need to understand that, and that you will support them in whatever decision they make. That's the instructions I give every time.
So that's your practice as opposed to being something you've been instructed to do?
Well, I haven't received formal instructions, that's what I'm saying, but that's what I understand clearly we're being asked to do.
And you say you've done this exclusively for, did you say 2 years or 2.5 years?
Yeah, about approximately 2 years. That's I've been taking the calls myself.
And these are calls about allegations of child sexual abuse?
Yes.
And how many such calls have you taken in that period, would you estimate?
I couldn't tell you, but we probably get 3, sometimes 4 a month.
And in respect of any of those, did you take the view that mandatory reporting requirements applied and therefore that the elders concerned had an obligation to report?
Yes.
And in respect of which states would those be?
South Australia and Victoria.
Now, I'd like to refer you to the Shepherd the Flock of God handbook, that's tab 120. And in particular, at page 133. Paragraph 22, string tail 134, page 133, that's right, under the heading Taking Brothers to Court. Now, you're familiar with this section of this handbook, I take it, Mr. Toole?
Reasonably familiar.
And there's a strong scriptural message or scripturally based message here in these paragraphs 22 and 23, isn't there, against the referral to secular authorities of disputes.
This is entirely civil matters, yes. Nothing to do with criminal.
Well, this is what I wanted to come to. Is it not the case, though, that, well, I'll withdraw that. What is the basis for you saying that that's entirely civil and not criminal?
Well, this is dealing with situations where people have personal differences. Maybe there's a difficulty with work. Maybe there's a situation with defamation, or situations that people may well have a dispute with each other. And so the admonition is, well, why not apply scriptural principles to try and resolve the matter? But it has there, and if you go on a little further, it actually speaks about there are some things that, even though they are personal matters, civil matters between individuals, they're the kind of thing that the congregation has no authority or no jurisdiction to be able to adjudicate on. Things like custody matters, probate matters and things like that. So it's just dealing with issues that exist between individuals, but certainly not criminal matters in any way, shape or form.
You would appreciate that, if not all, certainly in most circumstances that might give rise to a criminal charge, a civil wrong would also have occurred, which might give rise to a civil claim or dispute.
Well, that's potentially possible, yes.
Yes. Well, let's be more specific. In the case of a sexual abuse allegation, that may give rise to both a criminal charge and a civil claim.
All I can tell you is that that particular scripture does not prevent...
Well, it's going to help us if you just answer my question. I'm not talking about the scripture. I asked you a very specific question, which between you and I as lawyers, we should be able to discuss and find common ground quite easily. What I said to you is, in the case of a sexual abuse allegation, the facts of the allegation may give rise to both a criminal charge and a civil claim.
Yes, potentially.
So a person who's been abused would have an issue with, or a dispute with their abuser, which might give rise in the law to two matters to be resolved, one criminal and one civil.
Potentially, yes.
And is it not the case then that, absent any clear guidance to the contrary, that publishers who have access to this information like this would understand it to mean that their dispute, which arises from a sexual abuse allegation, is not to be referred to the courts,
No,
whether that's the criminal component or the civil component?
No, I completely disagree.
Well, you would have heard, well, I withdraw that. Did you follow the evidence in the Commission last week?
Yes.
Particularly of the two survivors, BCB and BCG,
Yes.
gave evidence?
Yes, I did.
So you will have heard BCB give evidence that she was taught that these passages applied equally to criminal complaints.
I did hear her say that.
I can tell you paragraph 16 of your statement. The quote that you have in that paragraph says that there is no obligation on elders to report if the law does not oblige it.
This is paragraph 16, did you say?
Yes, that's right. So where the law does not obligate elders to report cases that come to their attention, there is no need for them to do so. But if the matter becomes known to the authorities, they must cooperate, and so on. Or it doesn't actually say that they are required to disclose information they have in their possession, that they will do so unless they can claim ecclesiastical privilege. Now, as I understand it, and since you're the one who advises on reporting obligations, perhaps you can confirm, within the Jehovah's Witness view of things, in the absence of a legal obligation to report to authorities, whether police or child protection authorities, there's no moral obligation to report. Is that right?
Elders do not have the scriptural authority to take away the right of an individual to decide whether or not they want to pursue the matter or not. They have the right to make a decision in terms of their own best interests.
Well, you'll appreciate, Mr. Toole, that there are often circumstances in which an individual can't exercise such a right, such as a child, for example, whose parent, for whatever reason, doesn't exercise that right of reporting on their behalf.
Well, their guardian parent would be perfectly entitled to decide what's in their best interests.
And if their guardian parent did not report or told the elders, I'm not reporting, by reason, for example, if she doesn't want the abusing father to be charged and potentially go to jail, but the child remains at risk, would that not, within the Jehovah's Witness view of things, give rise to a moral obligation on the elders to report in order to protect the child?
And that's why they contact the service department and they discuss the whole situation and work out how best to be able to protect the child. There might be a whole lot of other avenues that the service department, in conjunction with the local elders, can discuss about how that's to be done. But at the end of the day, if you go back to an article that we have published in 1985, it said when you hear a report of child abuse whatever is necessary to be done needs to be done to protect the child.
So would it be right that in some circumstances there would be a need for elders to report to the authorities?
There may well be, yes.
And you see then where this quote says there is no need for them to do so. Do you see that? Where the law does not oblige elders to report cases that come to their attention, there is no need for them to do so. That
Just where are you reading from?
in the quote.
Oh, in the quote.
Yeah, in italics, where the law does not oblige elders to report cases that come to their attention, there is no need for them to do so. So that's indeed a discouragement to elders from reporting, isn't it?
No, I think you're possibly reading it a little in isolation. What that's saying in terms of mandatory reporting obligations, if there's an obligation to report, the elders report. If they don't have an obligation to report, well then as far as their legal obligation is concerned, well then they have no requirement to report. It's not discussing leaving people in or out of danger, it's just simply stating what their obligation is under the law.
Could I show you tab 131A? Which is a very recent document, 6th of November 2014, a letter from the branch to all bodies of elders, and it's headed Procedures when legal issues are involved. You were probably involved in drafting this letter, were you, Mr. Toole?
No, I was not.
But you're familiar with it, I take it?
Reasonably, yes.
Perhaps we can go to the third page, paragraph 14. Which deals with handling reports of crime when elders learn of alleged criminal activity on the part of one of Jehovah's Witnesses or someone associated with the congregation as the accused or the victim. They should immediately call the legal department. And then it goes on. You can read it to yourself if you like, but I think it's the 7th line down on the left-hand side. It starts strict confidentiality. Do you see that?
Yes.
Strict confidentiality must be maintained to avoid unnecessary entanglement with secular authorities who may be conducting a criminal investigation of the matter. Now, just in relation to that, this approach presupposes that any report of criminal activity is confidential. That would be right.
Can you restate the question, please?
Well, what is stated here presupposes that an allegation of criminal activity is confidential.
No. It presupposes that as far as the elders in dealing with the matter, information is confidential, but and the other aspect, they don't want to get involved or in any way disturb a police investigation or situation like that.
But of course, that confidentiality then, as I understand it, is confidentiality within the congregation. Is that right?
Well, it's within the confidentiality, but within the person who's actually hearing it. In fact, it would be the elder dealing with the matter if they were dealing with it.
Yes, and other than as provided for to have to tell the body of elders where that's required, that information would not be passed or should not be passed by that elder to others in the congregation.
No, they keep it confidential.
But there would be no breach of that confidentiality in the elder reporting an allegation of criminal activity to the authorities, would it?
Well, I guess that would depend on the circumstances, but in actual fact, they are breaching confidentiality to do that, but that may well be necessary in certain circumstances.
Yes. Well, I understand in certain circumstances it may be, but it's not necessarily so. In other words, if someone reports that to an elder that they saw some criminal activity, let's say robbery or something, absent a specific request from the person reporting that it be kept confidential, there would be no obligation of confidentiality on the elder, surely.
not in relation to that matter. Unless they were handling it themselves, they've only got second-hand information there.
And passing information to the authorities would not, as it's put there, produce an entanglement with the secular authorities. It would merely be making a report to the secular authorities.
If they were simply passing on that information, no, it wouldn't be they're passing on a comment that they've heard from someone else. Isn't that what you're asking?
Well, yes, that is what I'm asking. So in the case of a sexual abuse allegation, you would accept it's the victim's confidentiality.
Yes, and their right to be able to preserve or decide what they want done about it.
And if the victim does not require of the elder to not report, then there's no breach of confidentiality in reporting.
If the victim was quite happy for the elder to report, there'd be no reason why the elder wouldn't maybe even accompany the parent along to make sure that the report was made. There's no reason why that wouldn't be done. For example, in that case, one of those reporting situations that I mentioned in Victoria, that's exactly what was done. The two elders went to the police, spoke to the parent and the two elders went to the police and reported the matter.
Because if we look at paragraph 15, this question of confidentiality goes a bit further. Do you see paragraph 15? It's in relation to search warrants. Elders should never consent for anyone to search a kingdom hall or any other place where confidential records are stored. And then in particular, conscientious elders do all they reasonably and peaceably can to preserve the confidentiality of the congregation in harmony with the principle set out in Acts 5:29. Now, are you familiar with what that principle is, are you, Mr. Toole?
5:29.
Well, Peter said to the apostles, we must obey God as ruler rather than men. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Now, isn't that a clear message that there are circumstances in which God's law or rule or requirement will override what the authorities may require?
Well, that's possible, but I wonder if we could go back to paragraph, I think it's 4 of this document. I think it's 4. Let's see. Yes. There it says, direction on handling child abuse matters can be found in separate correspondence. However, we are pleased to provide consolidated direction in handling other congregation matters involving legal issues. So these are just general legal principles, but it's not specifically dealing with child abuse matters.
And I accept that, but dealing with it at the level of general legal principles, you will accept that what is said here and in reliance on Acts 5:29, there's a clear message sent to people, which is to not cooperate with secular authorities unless you have to.
No. The principle of 529 is that we will obey the authorities in whatever they ask us to do, but there is a relative subjection in the sense that we won't do what they ask us to do if they ask us to break God's law. And I think Mr. Spinks basically touched on that fairly clearly yesterday. So if in fact there is no basis to be able to retain information, we willingly will provide it. If there's a subpoena to ask for documents, we'll provide it. If there's a protection to that document, well, then that might be a different situation. But if there's no legal protection, and when it comes to child abuse matters, you may or may not be aware that ever since 1999, we've cooperated with the authorities, as far as I understand, on every instance where the authorities have asked for information. Elders have made statements, they've appeared as witnesses, documents have been produced when they've been requested. We have been absolutely open every time we've been approached by the authorities in relation to this matter.
I'm just addressing this right now at the level of the message that is sent to people reading Jehovah's Witness publications, including elders and publishers. So let me give you another example. If we can go to 127, that's tab 127, and starting at the first page so you can see what the publication is. It's Keep Yourselves in God's Love,
Yes.
and it's published in 2008, and again, this is a November 2014 printing of that publication, published by the governing body. And if we can look at page 59, that's ringtail 16. Paragraph 18. It deals with the concept of taking up the complete suit of armor. And you'll see it says, those who keep themselves in God's love also enjoy spiritual protection from Satan, who wants to deprive Christians not just of happiness, but of everlasting life. And then it's this bit that I'm interested in. It says, we have a struggle, said Paul, not against blood and flesh, but against the governments, against the authorities, against the world rulers of this darkness, against the wicked spirit forces in the heavenly places. And there's a scriptural support for that. The word struggle suggests that our fight is not long distance from the safety of hidden bunkers and so on. Furthermore, the terms governments, authorities, and world rulers indicate that attacks from the spirit realm are highly organized and deliberate. And what I'm suggesting to you is that this sends out a very clear message that adherence to the Jehovah's Witness system of beliefs should be skeptical of secular authorities and not cooperate with them unless they really have to.
I completely disagree.
Well, how are we to understand this?
We're talking about spiritual things in terms of Satan, demons, things that are really trying to attack your faith. There's a battle. To be able to preserve morality and preserve a code of behaviour that's acceptable to Christians is a battle in today's world. But can I just, again, just point you to something so that it really clarifies this issue?
Of course, I'd welcome it.
It's in Romans chapter 13. It was read yesterday, but this is the message that all Christians, Jehovah's Witnesses, take really seriously. Chapter 13.
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.